Thank you for joining me for Back to the Bible. Today is episode 37, Leviticus 9 through 12. In Leviticus 9, we see the consecration and obedience brings God's glory and the fire of His acceptance as it consumes the sacrifice that has been prepared on the altar. The people recognize the power and the glory of God, and they fear Him. They fall down before Him. In chapter 10, we see Nadab and Abihu, which are the sons of Aaron, probably his first and second sons. They bring this handheld censer, which is the coal of an altar or a fire somewhere, and they're going to light the incense. But it's not from the altar of the sanctuary, which is the way God required it to be. We don't know exactly where it might have come from, but we know it's a strange fire. In other words, it's not one that God had prescribed. It's not the fire from where. It's very important that we do it exactly the way God tells us to. They broke the prescription that God had made. They presented a common fire rather than the holy fire that God had intended. And God struck them dead. Now, Aaron and his sons could not even take time to mourn this without desecrating their own protocol, without desecrating the consecration that they had. So they continue to worship. We see that you must distinguish the holy from the unholy. You must distinguish the clean from the unclean. Aaron did not eat the sacrifice that was made that day. And Moses questioned this. He said, "Why didn't you do this? Because now the sins of the people won't be cleansed." And he brought to Moses' attention that possibly, at least I don't know if he was sure of this or what. We don't have a clear understanding, I don't think, here. But the idea that because of what his sons did, perhaps it would have been wrong for him to have eaten it. And because he looked at it this way, because his heart was pure before God, because he was trying to do the right thing, Moses accepted that. God accepted that. And Moses was satisfied at this point. In chapter 11, we see the clean versus the unclean animals. God wanted His people to be set apart, not only religiously, but practically. So even when they sat down to a meal, other people would know that they were different. Many of the unclean animals that is mentioned were those that were more likely to carry disease, and they didn't have a lot of the things that we do today to be able to protect them from those things. And many doctors would agree that on many cases, even though the Bible no longer keeps us from eating different kinds of food, we see that with Peter that we'll talk about later in the book of Acts. We still see that for the most part, most of the foods he tells us to eat and most of the foods he tells us not to eat are really good ideas from a dietary and a health perspective. We see the ritual cleansing after childbirth. Now, keep in mind that God told us to be fruitful and multiply, or told mankind to be fruitful and multiply. So there's nothing wrong with childbirth. As a matter of fact, it's a glorious thing. There's nothing wrong with the sexual union of a man and a woman. That's a glorious thing. But there was a time where there needed to be a break. There was a time where this issue of blood, whenever the blood drains from the body, that's considered to be hit it in the wrong direction, because blood was considered our life flow. And so there needed to be a time for the woman to get rest, to recuperate. And then at the end of that time, the sacrifice for thanksgiving for the child was given. And also it signified the rejoining back into the community, the rejoining of the woman back to the husband. And so that takes us through Leviticus 9 through 12. Thank you for joining me, and see you next time.